Greetings, YouTube. Once again, happy Sunday. I get asked questions, of course, every day. But the most common question I've received lately is, Prof, where the heck are dungeons? Normally, it's a 2-week on, 2-week off cycle. But it has been far more than 2 weeks off. And I started to think about this, and so I was responding to pretty much anyone who asked me, whether it was during a live stream or the Line app, etc., that I thought, given if you check the very bottom of the special milestones for the month of July, that you can see win dungeon fights using Spider-Verse champions, that the 2-week cycle for dungeon runs was going to coincide with the last 2 weeks or 14 days of this event. And it looks like for the most part, that is going to be the case. Now, dungeons are still something that a lot of people tell me they're not sure if they want to do. You see, Dungeons was really bad when it first came out. So many glitches, so many bugs. And I would imagine that Kabam spent a lot of money actually forming what we now know as Dungeons. Not just for the communication aspect of it, but even the design of the maps, levels, etc. They expected it to be a huge revenue stream for them. But the problem was that people like myself, who have a stacked 5 and now even 6-star roster, you could easily play the first day of Dungeons, put your A squad out there, and then just wait a couple days, and you were guaranteed, because of the awesome small refresh timers that were assigned particularly to 5 stars, you're always guaranteed, if you did Dungeons on the first day with a 3-day cycle, that you could have your A team every single time. Kabam caught on to this. They did not want this to be the case, and so they used kind of a smoke screen of some really, really small rewards to just explode the amount of time that you had to wait to get your champions out of dungeon jail, hoping that you would have to spend units to get them out early, and or that the dungeons would become harder and you would lose your champions. You would either have to buy dungeon potions and dungeon revives, or go to your B and C squad, who are assumably a lot worse than your top 3, and then that would cost you units. But I think the effect was just a lot of people stopped doing it. So we have some dungeon changes, and I've covered this, but I think it's worth mentioning if you missed the video, because it is a significant change to the dungeon store, that for the first time ever, we actually have the ability to buy 3-star, 4-star, and now 5-star basic crystals for a discounted price, meaning that normally for a 5-star, if you can't buy 5-star dungeon crystals yet, if you don't have the recommended amount or the required amount, it takes 27,000 dungeon artifacts to buy a 5-star dungeon crystal, which gives you a 10% drop rate out of 1 of 10 champions. They do a pretty good job of making sure most of the time that there's some great champions, some middle tier champions, and some trash champions. Of course, this gives you every champion that is in the basic, and it's 5,000 dungeon artifacts less, which I think is pretty significant, given it saves you some time, and you don't have to worry about getting so much trash, unless, of course, you love the thrill of, say, chasing the Chaos Crystal and hoping, in this case, you pull an Iceman, or who knows, maybe even a Venomoduck or a Black Widow. But they also sometimes like to do these special dungeon days, and that brings us to today's announcement, because Dungeon Days start soon. July 28th through the 31st, the last 3 days of the month. There are special bonuses and enhancements. We haven't received all of the specifics yet. I would imagine those will come in the next 24 to 48 hours. But we'll have solo objectives, which we know at least some of them already with the Spider-Verse inclusion. A global 25% dungeon point boost. I think that's fantastic. That means less fights to get the maximum points per day, and then greatly reduced champion refresh cost, which hopefully means, if nothing else, that they return the refresh cost from when Dungeons had their original heyday, which I would say was, I don't know, 6-7 months ago, and give us those refresh costs that were like 48 hours instead of 92 hours. So that's pretty exciting. Plus it says that you can also challenge more rooms, which I don't think that's going to be the case. I think people are just going to get their points and then do less rooms, but who knows? Maybe some people will actually be incentivized, if the rewards are good enough, to push through, because Kabam, of course, isn't doing this just to be nice. They want people to have to spend units for refreshes, but most importantly on potions and revives, which can be quite costly. I say that for your unit's sake, dungeon potions and revives are the worst thing to spend them on, because you can just restart another dungeon run with hopefully 3 other champs, and maybe you'll have to go from dungeon 7 to dungeon 6 or dungeon 6 to dungeon 5, but save your units for something better and just use your full roster, which takes advantage of the fact that you've ranked up so many champions over the months and years anyway. So there you have it, YouTube. Dungeon days are going to be here to stay for 3 days at the end of the month, and of course, on top of that, we now have that 5-star basic crystal. So the question I ask at the end of this video is, are these things enough incentives for you to do dungeons if you haven't done them in quite some time, or do you still think you will skip them? What do you think needs to be improved? What kind of rewards do we need to be talking about for you to jump in the game? Comment below, let me know, and as always, thank you for watching and supporting my Marvel Contest of Champions YouTube channel. Have a great Sunday, YouTube.